Hello, this is the video introduction to Chapter 5, Elasticity. Elasticity, I think, is the stickiest of the chapters in terms of understanding, but it's interesting in its own way. So, first of all, the chapter starts out with a general understanding of what is elasticity. It really measures when you have a relationship between two variables. If one variable changes, the other is going to respond. So, elasticity asks, when you have a relationship and you change one variable, does the other variable respond or change a lot or a little? So is the other variable responsive or not to the change in the first one? So we look at elasticity with four relationships that we've already covered so far. One is the demand relationship, which is the relationship between price and the quantity that consumers will buy. If the price changes, that is, if the price goes down, for instance, then the quantity is going to go up. But it depends on different people and what the good in question is, whether the quantity is going to change a lot or a little. If it changes a lot in response to a price change, we say that this relationship is sensitive, or that quantity demanded is responsive to the price change, and that means elastic. If the quantity demanded doesn't change very much, it's unresponsive, inelastic. So that's the basic idea of elasticity, and it has a couple of other dimensions to talk about as well. So when we talk about elasticity of demand, there are three ways to look at it. One is the coefficient. That's a ratio. It's a ratio of the percentage change in quantity demanded. That's the numerator, and the denominator is the percentage change in price. Now, if the quantity changes a lot, in percent terms, when the price changes just a little, that ratio, the numerator, is going to be larger than the denominator, so the ratio is going to be greater than 1. Greater than 1 in absolute value terms. In fact, the relationship is negative, so the sign of that ratio would always be negative, and we always tend to ignore it. So if the ratio in terms of absolute value is greater than 1, it means the quantity change is greater than price change, and consumers are said to be elastic. But if the price changes quite a lot and consumers barely change their buying, that suggests that the consumers are not very sensitive to the price change. The relationship is inelastic. And when if for instance the price goes up 20% and consumers only cut back by 2%, then that ratio is 2 over 20. That's the percentage price change of 20. That's the denominator. Percentage change in quantity is the numerator. That's 2%. So that would be 1/10. That's very inelastic. So that's the coefficient and how to calculate it. You'll need to calculate it. Then the second is the determinants. What makes a good elastic or inelastic? What makes gasoline relatively inelastic, and what makes, I don't know, orange soda relatively elastic? If you raise the price of gasoline 25%, the people are going to cut back in their purchases maybe 5%. So that's 5 over 25. It's less than 1. It's inelastic. Whereas orange soda, you raise the price 10%, people are likely to cut back 20%. Why? Why is orange soda elastic and gasoline inelastic? And so there are things that determine whether it's elastic or not. The first is whether there are many good available substitutes. If there are a lot of substitutes, people, when the price goes up, they just switch out and buy the other product. But if they're not good substitutes, even though the price goes up, people are still stuck buying it. They can cut back a little bit, but they're still stuck buying. That's the case with gasoline. Whereas orange soda, there are so many other substitutes. You raise the price of orange soda and they just go buy grape or something. So that's the first one, substitutes. The second determinant is whether it is a large or small percentage of the budget. Consumers are much more sensitive to big ticket items because 10% of a car is $2,000, whereas 10% of a pack of gum is a nickel. The same 10%. In one case it's $2,000, in the other case it's a nickel. So people will care about the big ticket items percentage change. They won't care much about the small ticket items percentage change. So that's the second determinant, if the percentage of a budget, if it's a large ticket item or a small ticket item. Then the third one, the book and I disagree. I say it's luxury versus necessity. Luxuries tend to be elastic and necessities tend to be inelastic. The book insists that the third one is the amount of time that consumers have to adjust to a price change. If you give more consumers time to adjust to a price change, they'll adjust more because it takes time for consumers to make the adjustments. It also takes time for producers to make the substitutes available so that consumers can cut back on their purchases of the original good if the price goes up. The third has to do with total revenue, and total revenue is price times quantity. That one's very interesting, and maybe I don't know, I think I've done a video on this. Now, there are two wrinkles. One is the price range. At high prices, demand is elastic for any good. Doesn't matter. At high price ranges, it's elastic, and at low price ranges, it's inelastic, and right in the middle, it's uninelastic. Then we go to supply, and it's the coefficient again. Now we're looking at the relationship between the price of a good that sellers are going to receive when they go to sell the good and the quantity that they will produce and offer for sale in the market. So again, you stack up the percentage change in quantity over the percentage change in price, and if the ratio is greater than 1, it means it's elastic. If it's less than 1, it's inelastic. If it's exactly equal to 1, we call it uninelastic. The determinants of elasticity of supply now are very straightforward. It's time, time, and time. If you give producers a short amount of time to increase their production in response to a price increase, they will produce more. If you give them a short amount of time, they will not change their quantity supply very much at all because it takes time to increase quantity supply. So time, time, time. There's the immediate market period, the short run, and the long run. Then there's income elasticity, which measures a percentage change in the quantity of a good purchased as a result of a percentage change in income. Now that one's interesting. It's the same issue. If the ratio is greater than 1, it's elastic. Less than 1, it's inelastic. But now there's one additional little factor for both income elasticity and cross-price elasticity. Cross-price elasticity measures a percentage change in the quantity of good A as a result of a change in the price of good B. This looks at related goods. Cross-elasticity looks at related goods. So income elasticity, if the price goes up and the quantity purchased goes up, then it'll be either elastic or inelastic, depending on whether the ratio is greater than, equal to, or less than 1. But if one goes up and the other goes up, then the sign of that ratio is positive, and that means it's a normal good. But some goods, income goes up and the quantity purchased goes down. These are inferior goods, and the sign of the elasticity coefficient will be negative, because they're moving in opposite directions if it's an inferior good. Normal good, positive sign. Negative good, a negative sign, it's an inferior good. Cross-price elasticity measures complements and substitutes. Substitutes move in the same direction, so the sign would be positive. If the price of Coca-Cola goes up, then the quantity purchased of Pepsi-Cola is going to go up because people are going to buy less Coke and more Pepsi. So if the price of Coke goes up, the quantity of Coke will go up as well. If the price of Coca-Cola goes down, the quantity of Pepsi will go down because people will buy more Coca-Cola now and less Pepsi. So they both move in the same direction. That's positive sign. So if the sign of the cross-elasticity coefficient is positive, you know that that the two goods are substitutes. But if the sign of the cross-elasticity coefficient is negative, that means they're complements. So for instance, gasoline, the price of gasoline and gas hog SUV cars. If the price of gasoline goes up, the quantity purchased of gas hog SUV cars, which I own one, goes down. And if the price of gasoline goes up, the quantity purchased of these gas hog SUVs goes. If the price of gasoline goes down, the quantity of these SUVs goes up. So since they move in opposite directions, the sign of the ratio will be negative. And that tells you that the two goods are complements. So cross-price elasticity, the sign matters, could be positive or negative. Income elasticity, the sign matters, could be positive or negative. So with the elasticity of demand, the sign is always negative. We know that. With the elasticity of supply, the sign of the coefficient is always positive. We know that. Income elasticity and cross-price, the sign could be positive or negative, and it means something. So then the end of the book, oh, look at that, it's beautiful. This has to do with total revenue and elasticity. Oh, my bookie's calling. Perfectly elastic demand. Perfectly elastic. Where is it? There it is. perfectly inelastic, elastic, inelastic. Beautifully flashed, you can ooh and ah. Real-world estimates of elasticity of demand. Well, I don't know if I have it. I guess the link is broken. Supply in the immediate market period, perfectly inelastic. Supply in the short run, and supply in the long run, it's a teeter-totter. And if you want to listen to farm subsidies, this podcast by Walter Williams is great because they take and they apply elasticity issues to the farm, what we call the farm problem. It's pretty interesting. And I hope you will like it. There are a couple of things I want to show you besides this. If you go back to the faculty.ivc.edu page and you go to exercises, you can see here that there is a practice quiz on elasticity, utility, and supply and demand, I believe. And then there are videos on calculating elasticity coefficients and total revenue. And of course, there is always the good old, Mackenzie has some as well here. There's Mackenzie, can't find it right now. Anyway, how about another painful pun? Did you hear about the Buddhist who refused his dentist Novocaine during root canal work? He wanted to transcendental medication. Okay, so anyway, there are other things that you can work on here. That'll do.